Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia, and tonight, our story comes from the world of creepypastas, more specifically, Lost Episode creepypastas. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, Ed, Edd, and Eddy, the Lost Episode. As you may know, the popular show Ed, Edd, and Eddy has been running for quite some time. However, between October 7th, 2003 and October 21st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. As it was known to some around the office, the primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead of going on to make episode 34, the show was supposed to replay episode 1. At 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, people reported a very disturbing new episode premiering on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. The quality of the episode was mediocre when held to the regular standards. Animation was choppy, sound was constricted and very muffled, reports of a lion running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS tape, were received. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing, without changing props and other background objects. Stormy looking. Characters also behaved oddly. Instead of being the normal goofy hijinks-inspired personalities, viewers complained that they seemed slightly agitated and gratuitously hateful towards each other, and constantly began sobbing after the lines. The protagonist also had a very bad lisp, and no one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone that further bothered viewers. I was one of these viewers. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noted that Double D was missing. There was an angular shot coming from in front of the two, showing them walking toward the viewer. He, Eddy, was wearing the angry look he does when something goes wrong. His eyes were red around the iris. Ed looked absolutely forlorn and practically dragged behind Eddy, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking opposite outward directions. Kevin, the series antagonist, was riding his bike opposite the Eds, toward them. The shot became blurry and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went to black. The screen snapped back and Kevin was again headed toward Eddy. The view was so blurry this time, all I saw was a green glob headed toward a yellow one. Again, the low moan, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken and loud static came, greatly overshadowing the moan. A claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been the abruptness, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room, the fast pitter-patter of footsteps being the only audio. The step sounds were as clear as I was shown a bird's-eye view of him scampering around the room. There were no visible doors. Double D began screeching as he moved wildly around the cell of a room, faster and faster, until the screen blurred again, the purple room's color swallowing a now orange blur. An extreme close-up of Eddy's front door sat in absolute silence for a maddeningly long time, at least 2 minutes of dead silence and a door. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some kind. Jimmy, obstructed in the view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly, with Sarah trying to comfort him in an unusually warm fashion. "It hurts, Sarah. It hurts." Suddenly the door of the room smashed open, revealing a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown. His headgear was mangled, bent upward, stretching his lip to high tearing proportion. The front of his gums were trickling blood, and teeth were missing. The disturbing part was he had lost both his arms and his legs beforehand, and sat a paraplegic. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that the others had beaten him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as a picture, silent as ever. The commercials came on. We were instantly assaulted with a very hairy Rolf in his darkened shed fisting the cow repeatedly. The visual loops and gets blurry again as the scene pans out. Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. Eddy is now alone without Ed. The quality declines worse than before, and he is still walking. The sun is now lightening the mood somewhat as he smiles and begins running. The door is shown again, and we see through Eddy's eyes as he reaches out to open it. His house is nice and bright. A very badly played violin is blaring, the only audio in the scene that makes sense as he walks through his house. Eddy opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown under Naz's couch. He crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops behind her, still obvious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw in his eyes, and I thought in a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head, still in a cartoonish fashion, of course, but this was different. He and she stayed this way until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was laying on Eddy's floor, no longer in claymation. The camera showed Eddy's house for the remainder of the episode, about 3 minutes, and then the next program began on the spot. That was Ed, Edd, and Eddy, the lost episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. Like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Good night, everyone.